Greetings, good people. Welcome to Who Knows It's Just Life, the podcast. I'm your host, Kyle. Thank you for fitting me into your day today. On today's episode, yet again, we are joined by the lovely Miss Cierra Lewis.
Hi, y'all. It's me. Again. I'm back.
Back at it. Actually, I'm back in Virginia Beach.
Yes. You are in the 757.
Yes.
You were in the beach.
I am. And so Sierra's in Norfolk, so not too far away.
Yeah.
So we decided to do an episode here and had a little bit of technical difficulties, which raised my blood pressure, but we're going to make it work with what we got.
Facts. So, like, we went back to the basics, which I think is really cool because magic happens, right? Like life happens, stuff happens, but it's in the trenches. I mean, not the real trenches, but like it's in the trenches metaphorically that like some of the best things come together. So yes. We out here, we rolling with the punches.
Yeah, we gonna make the best of it. So today's episode is kind of a revisit on restorative justice, which is an episode I did about a year ago exactly with Mr. Randell Strickland. And if you haven't checked that episode out, it's a really good one. I encourage you to check it out. We thought it would be really interesting to revisit this topic because Cierra had an incident this summer with her vehicle that kind of brought up the idea of restorative justice versus criminal justice and all of that.
All the things.
So... and it's all very much in the flux right now. They're still very much in the process. So anyway, we're gonna give more on that in a little bit. First, though, did you want to kick it off with the
icebreaker?
The icebreaker.
Okay,
yeah.
So boom, there was this TikTok, right? And the question was, after watching the Hunger Games, or if you read the books, y'all know. Basically, at the end of the movie, spoiler alert. The government is kind of overthrown, and the question is, do we do to the Capitol's children what they did to us, if only for a generation? Now, in the movie, I think Katniss does say yes, and then she storms out, but the vote does not pass through. But again, it was at that moment when they posed this question to her that she realizes, this is a whole systemic thing, and it's like, I don't want to spoil it, so you got to watch it. But the person posed this question where it was like, hey, as Black people, if we had the opportunity, would we enslave white people for a generation? Like we done got our reparations, and it's like, for you to understand how we felt, we are going to enslave you. Would you or would you not do it? And so I'm going to ask Kyle. Before I answer, because we talked about it already.
We did.
But let's hear your answer.
So, my answer is no.
Mm-hmm.
And my answer is no because I feel like the root of the issue is trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't heal a trauma by inflicting more trauma.
Facts.
And I also think that I've learned, and again, not an expert. It's called Who Knows It's Just Life. We just learning.
Right.
What did the kiddo say? He said,
life is
an improvisation. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So fully embracing that. What I've learned is that trauma happens both ways. Even the person doing the trauma, causing the harm, is experiencing trauma as well, which is kind of weird to think about. But I kind of see that happen. I could see that being true. So... we often, in the past, we've talked about how for white people to do what they've done, they've had to, in order to treat us as less than human, they've kind of become less than human themselves. Mm-hmm. And so if that's true, then I wouldn't want us to become less than human in the treatment of somebody else in that same way.
Yeah. Yeah. So for my answer, I said no, but I said no from a strictly a faith-based perspective, right? Because I know if you look in the Old Testament, it says eye for eye, cheek for cheek. But when Jesus came back, he was just like, but that leaves the whole world blind. Like, that's not the way that it should be. If someone slaps you, turn the other cheek. And then they ask him, like, Rabbi, how many times are we supposed to forgive people? And he says 70 times 7. And he does not mean 100.
Literally.
Right. It's supposed to mean like multiple times, as many times as you can. And so in that whole concept of forgiveness, it's like, I can't do to you, again, off of like this biblical teaching, I can't do it because I know it's not going to heal my soul in the womb that has been caused. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I saw those memes after like the Alabama, like the brawl where like white people in the field, and I was like, Kiki. But again, it is like I think of that book, I think the Colonizer or something like that, and it's like, you know, to colonize, and then to even again subjugate people to inhumanity, you lose a part of your own humanity, and so I just know biblically and even faith, and I'm not saying like, hey, biblically I can't do it, but I want to, but it's like, as much as I would like for people to understand and empathize and get what Black people went through, I personally would not do it. Just because, again, just off the following and the teaching of Jesus Christ.
But
I don't.
What if a whole bunch of people did want to do it? What would you like? Would you actively convince them to not do it? To not vote?
If they were, okay. So I'll put it like this, because let's say they were Christian. I mean, even if they weren't, I would be like, hey, as followers of Christ, we shouldn't do that. But if someone's like, I'm not a follower of Christ, I'm like, if you want, I can tell you about him, so maybe you can be, but I'm not going to force that on you. Mm-hmm. So you're going to do what you want to do, but I will like talk about like you going to compromise your own soul there, bruh. Mm-hmm. And it's a very slippery slope. But yeah, like to really walk that whole faith thing out, where it's like Jesus would not enslave you,
right?
And that's a whole like, and that's a thing, like really working that out. And like I think there's a scripture where it talks about like working out your own soul salvation, and like that's part of it, where it's like, bro, like even it's like, yo, I really want to cut somebody out, and it's like that's not Christ-like. Mm-hmm. and really having to go high when they go low, because sometimes it's like, listen, you be wanting to get low, but it's like that high road would be like, okay, let me just mosey on down this high road.
Yeah, and obviously that's a really difficult choice to make, but it is admirable, and I appreciate that perspective.
Okay, I did want to say something, because I just thought about this too. I did ask this to another friend. I asked a friend this, and she said absolutely. She said yes, and her whole thing was, she was just like, just so that people could have the context of what Black people went through. She was like, I would love for you to feel what it's like to you know, have your children snatched from you and to worry about like that trauma. And she was like, I wouldn't. And she was like, she said, like, you know, she doesn't know if she would be like the purveyor of this abuse, but she was like, for y'all to feel what we felt, absolutely, because then that would grow your own empathy.
I think that's a good point. I came to a conclusion similar to that a couple of years ago when I was in Richmond, Virginia. Something about Virginia. And I think I mentioned it on a show I did after that, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, we were with the Alegba Folklore Society in Richmond, and there's this, so in Richmond they call it the slave trail. Like we as Africans would probably call it like the enslavement trail, or the trail of commemoration of enslavement. We would probably call it something different, something a little better. But anyway, they took us to one of the landing spots of enslaved folks when they first got off the ships here in Richmond. And there's a trail that's iconicized in Richmond that has like placards and stuff like that along the way. It's a few miles long, whatever, and it goes all the way to the trading post. And these are elder Black folks who are carrying us through this, but they tied us together with rope. Not hard, but just to get the feeling of like being tied to everybody else. And we had to put our hand on the right shoulder or the shoulder of the person in front of us. They put the men in front, the kids in the middle, and the women in the back, and that was intentional, because the men couldn't protect anybody, women could see everybody suffering and couldn't do anything about it, and the babies were in the middle and everybody could hear everything. So, and our elders were like pretending to be masters, basically, and like saying all the kind of shenanigans that you might think they might be saying in that kind of scenario. Mind you, if we were truly coming off the boat, we don't understand a lick of what they're saying, because we got whatever language we're coming from. I felt like white people should experience that, both as the slave driver and the enslaved, because they were the slave driver. Their ancestral folks were the slave driver in that scenario. But for the empathy piece that your friend mentioned, that you mentioned, they should also be in those shoes too. And I think that is a powerful experience, but I wouldn't say yes to the question posed, because that's an entirely generational systemic trauma that would be severe. I was also careful with that because Black people wouldn't be traumatized by that experience because we're not there. It's them doing to themselves what they did to us as part of the learning process to like get us to a place of restoration and reparations and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Just you describing that, I was like, oh Lord, I don't know how you did it, because I would have been like, no.
Yeah, it was heavy. It was heavy.
Because how do you walk away from that and just be like I don't see. That's why I don't watch certain movies because I know like I'm gonna have to come out into space and like
see these people.
Yeah, and I don't want to be like glowing and just looking at somebody like you and your people are monsters, right? And so it's like how like ugh. But I agree. I do think that should be something that they should experience. Not the original question, but like to walk that trail. Yeah. And was it all Black people on this trail doing this?
It was all Black people in our group, yes. And we only did a third of a mile. We didn't do the whole thing because we had the babies with us, and we also had like a number of other stops that we were making.
You took your kiddo to that too?
So not at that trip. Okay. My homeboy had his kids with him, and a bunch of folks that had their kids with them. We were probably a group of about 20 or so. Okay. I took my kid, his best friend, and his best friend's mom came along too. We all did it together in April this year.
That same trail.
Yep. And we actually went the whole way. We went from the beginning to the end, and I did as much as I could barefoot because we were barefoot, and so I did it barefoot until we got to like hot cobblestone, and I was like, I'm not doing it here. but I wanted to, and there was glass stuff too. So but seriously, it was like, yo, like this is what it would have been like. And I explained, I did very much what the Illegible Folklore Society did for us. I was like, we were chained together at our necks, hands, and feet with steel. Like what happens to steel when it gets hot? What happens to steel when it gets cold? Like these are the conditions.
Oh my! You committed.
Yeah, no, I told them all, and so they're like 9, 10, 11-ish, ages. So it was like, they were able to understand. And I gave them the rundown of it in the beginning, and we poured ashe. We did some things to commemorate the ancestors, but then we just went on a walk, and it wasn't heavy the whole time. It wasn't like that. But I did want to set the stage. What I would also say as a slight criticism to Richmond, again, the name is problematic. The trail itself is not even safe. It's like you get close, and then there's this bridge, and you're basically walking on this narrow part of this bridge, which is like, it's nerve-wracking, and it's just not at all like if this was, I don't like to compare, I don't like to oppression Olympics, but I have my hunch is that if this was if the folks that did this suffering, if the commemoration was for folks of a different hue, a little bit more care would be given to that commemorative walk in my
I think that's facts, and shout out to you, because I'm just like, bruh, that's a lot, like to, and I think that's a good way to like introduce even just like history to your kid in that space too, because like that's a lot, like that's heavy. Yeah. Like I was like, oh nah, like if you were to be like, hey, you want to do this? I'm like, no fam.
Yeah, no,
no fam.
I feel you, and I have complete respect. Yeah, I know for that, and for the kids, it was like part of the reason, part of what I afterwards I was like, so what did we take away from this? What did we learn? Yeah, and one of the things that came out was like, our ancestors made it through that. Yes. So we can do anything. And it's like, schoolwork is going to be hard. Dealing with classmates, that's going to be hard. But none of that hard is what we've done already. We've done the hardest of hard in our ancestry, our lineage. Exactly. So, anyway, so it hopefully it landed with an empowering note,
of course.
But anyway.
Yeah, and I just say that. And I say that too, not to like, no shame or nothing. Like, I think that is a very cool, very brave thing. I just think for me, I'm someone who's very empathetic. And so like, I feel the feel. Yeah. I would feel the feels, and I would like, I have a thing about crying in public. So that's a thing.
Right. You wouldn't want to bring yourself to that point.
Exactly. And just like the reliving and feeling all that. So I was like, oh nah. Yeah. But I do think that is a very cool, like, parenting thing. And like, so good parenting. Good job on that.
Thank you. I tried. But getting back to the question, where I like to land on that, like the quick one-liner that I would say is that like, you got to give credit to Kimberly Jones, who said it. And I'm not sure if she was the first one to say it, but she said it during the uprising in 2020 after George Floyd, and she had this beautiful long soliloquy basically of why everything was happening at that time, and she said, "You better be lucky we're seeking justice and not revenge."
I remember that. Yeah. And that is, I think that's the perfect one-liner, and that's what it is. It's like, I want justice, not revenge.
So,
yeah.
Segue.
Oh, yeah. So in terms of in the state of our country, yes, I want justice. In this case, okay.
So before we get into your case, we'll do. I already did a little bit of a recap of the episode with Randell Strickland. So, so yeah, before we get into that, we'll do a quick recap of what the episode with Randell Strickland was about, and restorative justice. So we talked about. So Randell Strickland, first of all, he served in the military. He was from Chicago, Illinois originally. He went through a little bit of family history and whatnot. But I thought it was really interesting that he was in the military, in the behemoth of military-industrial complex, and he's at a place now where he is doing restorative justice work. And generally, like he believes in self-defense, but also nonviolence as a rule. As a guideline for life, but obviously violence in the sense of self-defense is necessary when it has to be.
Yeah.
And anyway, so there was a cool episode just about that whole thing, but restorative justice focusing on one of the things he mentioned was that justice should heal and not punish. And so I'm gonna bring in other themes of what we talked about, but I wanted to mention that before we get started, and then we can pivot to your experience.
Yeah.
And I really want to delve into the feelings, because I think that's a huge part of what happened. Like when harm is caused, it is literally hurt, and that's an emotional component that I feel like we kind of lose sight of that, or we can. So, without further ado, please share the story of what happened to your car.
So let's take it back to May, right? So this is May. Someone attempts to steal my car. They smash out my window, and again, I have a Hyundai Elantra. So I don't know if you guys know, but basically a lot of Hyundais are being stolen. So they tried to steal it, couldn't get it. And I'm like, okay. So I'm without a car, I'd say about a month, get my car back in July. So this happens in May. I'm out of a car until about June 20th. So around June, because this is I had a Juneteenth thing. So it's I had my car back by then. So June, couple weeks. So then 2 weeks, I would say at least 2 or 3 weeks. No, or almost a month, right? So I have my car for almost a month. My sister comes into town, right? July. We're having a day. So I cut my hair, get my hair cut and done. So I'm feeling all cute. We doing brunch and it's just your sister's in town. You got a new haircut. It's new woman, who this? Right. So we outside, we outside. I'm taking pictures and cause she looks really good. I'm I'm just gonna do a mini photo shoot for you, cause it's you deserve it. So we see the storm clouds roll in. And I'm all right, look, this is a silk press, and if you know anything about silk presses, maybe you gotta adapt, okay? And so it's I see the rain and the clouds. I'm we gotta go. We make it home. Again, it's I just pull up, pull up, made it to the house. Before I could even finish parking, it is torrential rain pouring, and I'm shit. Okay, because I'm yeah, y'all gonna get this hair for a couple days. What's that TikTok sound? Prepare to be sick of me, because I was feeling myself. Okay, because it was giving. So without thinking, and here's the thing: I have a Hyundai, so I had the little the steering wheel lock, that you put across the little thing. But again, I'm thinking it's been a month. No one really has done anything. It's kind of daylight-ish. I mean, it's torrential rain and clouds, and it looks ugly outside. But I'm I'm good. I'm trying to get into the house, so I don't put my club on. So I'm rushing into the house, have my umbrella, and just literally trying to make it into the house. I'm in the house for the night. This is a Sunday night. So I'm preparing to get ready for work the next day. My sister's there, and she's oh, I'll stay an extra couple days. I'm cool. So I don't think nothing of it. I go to bed. And so when I get home, it's 3:00 in the afternoon, but we're in for the day. Yeah. So I go to bed, talk to my sister, and we're just processing, not just processing, but just kind of having sister time, you know? Yeah. So we're just kikiing, talking about life. I go to bed, get ready for work. I wake up, and after the first time someone attempted to steal my car, I had this habit of rushing to my window to check for my car. So I'm getting ready for work. I check the window and my car is not there. And I'm like, ain't no way in hell. And I'm like, well, maybe somebody, I'm like, well, maybe my sister moved it. And she had her own car. So I'm like, hey, did you hear anything? Did you see anything? I'm like, did you get up in the middle of the night, like move my car or something? And she's like, no. And I'm just upset. And I'm just like, how could I be so stupid? This has happened to me again. How could this have happened? Like, I'm blaming myself. I'm like, Lord, like, did I do something? Like, am I in the wrong? Is this a result of me sinning? Like, I'm like going through the motions, and we'll get into that because I was talking to my auntie, and she was like, things in life are going to happen, and it's not a result of you sinning. It's not a result of some sort of punishment.
It's not always karmic,
right? It's just like stuff happens, and I was just like, so I called the cops, and we're going through the things, and then 3 days, and at that time I'm just upset. So my sister's like, it's okay, like I'm here, I still have a car, like, and I'm called out of work, and I'm just like, well, they're like, you can work from home for the week, so they were accommodating with that.
That's good.
Getting insurance, and I think insurance is you got to wait at least 3 days before you get a rental car, just so we can kind of figure out what we're doing. So I'm just like, oh Lord, I don't got a car, and I'm thinking, well, it's like maybe they'll total it, I can get a new car. But I didn't even really want to go that far because I was just like, I still had like sentimental things in that car. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just like, okay. And I'm like, and I am someone who I'm constantly working on like anxiousness, right? So one of my favorite scriptures that I use to like kind of like still my mind is be anxious for nothing but give praise and pray about everything. But I'm like in the emotions of it. Like I'm still in the feels of it. And I'm just like trying to like hold it together, keep a strong front. And I'm like, I'm just so livid. And I think I was scrolling or I came across this scripture. It's like Isaiah 46:4. And it says like, I, the Lord, have carried you. Basically, I'm going to paraphrase. It's like, I've carried you since you were young. I'll carry you into your old age. And I don't know what it was, but it just kind of stilled me. And I was like, okay. I was like, however this shakes, it's okay. However, whatever happens, it's okay. Because like, it's producing faith. It's producing endurance. It's building character, right? And I'm like, again, I'm like, and I was like, Lord, your word says you have carried me since I was young. You will carry me into my old age. I will be okay. And so like, I'm good. So day 3, I get a call from the detective. Okay, and I'm like, hello. And he's like, we found your car. And I'm like, you sure? And he's like, yeah, it's your car. We found it. And he was like, we arrested the perp. I was just like, mother sucker. I was like, okay. And so I called the insurance and they go through the thing and you happen to go through that process of, you know, like damages, all the things. So I get a rental car. Long story short, the cops did not tell me exactly what happened, right? It was supposed to be in the subpoena, but my subpoena got lost. But long story short, the cop spotted the car because the dummy didn't take it to a chop shop, which again, if you're in the 757, you know, Portsmouth, if I'm in Norfolk, Portsmouth is like chop shop city. So he could have took the car, but he was just joyriding with him and his little hooligans. And they trashed my car. And so basically, and like the adjuster's like, hey, do you want to look at the car? I was like, I can't. I could not, because I knew, again, I don't like to cry in public. Right. I have a thing, and I'm working on that, y'all. Ain't nothing wrong with crying. Crying is release. But I was like, nah, I can't go through the emotions of it. So I was like, nope, take the car. And they were like, well, and the adjuster's like, here's what we can do. 2 things. He was like, we can total the car out and give you the money, or, because what happened was they were smoking in my car and they like used the seats as ashtrays and would like burnt holes
burn out the
in the seat. And I was just like, and I'm thinking, and the adjuster's like, it's not terrible. He's like, it's not bad at all. He's like, I have to tell you because it is my job to look at every detail. And I was like, well, how much would it be if, you know, if you total it out? And he tells me, and basically I'm like, well, damn, that equals the amount of the car. I wouldn't have anything left for like a new car. And I'm like, all right. But he's like, well, here's what we could do. He was like, we can fix everything else, but if we can't fix the seats. Because, like, the seats, to fix the seats is like $2,000 a pop. We would totally we would have to.
That would total it out.
Yeah, so I was just like, go on, bro. Do what you gotta do. Do what you gotta do. So they go in and fix it. So for about a month, I have a rental car. And they're like, all right, you got to get rid of it. Well, you don't got to get rid of it. But it's like, hey, your reservation is up. So I'm like 3 weeks without a car. And I'm like, okay, so I'm taking Lyfts and Ubers and I'm door dashing, I'm Instacarting, and like my job is kind of flexible, but not so much. And I was just like, okay, so and let me just rewind a little bit. So like the cops say they have the young man. I know someone who is who has access to like a database of sorts. Mm-hmm. So I told this person like the assailant's name. Or is he an assailant? The perpetrator's name. And they look him up, and they were able to find their address. I said, "What's the address?" And he's like, "I can't give that to you."
Yeah, that's.
I was like, "What's the address?" He's like, "I can't get." He's like, "I'll tell you the street," and he told me the street name, mm-hmm. and he told me the city. And when I tell you, there were times I would get in, I would get up, I would get in the car, the rental car, and I would just contemplate just driving to that city. Drive into that street, and in my mind, I was just gonna pound on every door and be like, "Is this your kinfolk?" I'm like, "Cause I was going to, like, when I tell you, I was going to write a scathing, victim impact statement, because they were like, you can write that if you want to," mm-hmm. And so then I would talk to like you, and I would talk to like other friends, and you guys were like voices of reason. And I've been like mentioning my faith a lot in this episode, because it's one of those things I feel like in every person's life where you come to a moment, there's a moment where you have to figure out, are you going to walk it like you talk it? And I'm still in this process, right? Like, yeah. Like I think Paul says, I haven't reached perfection, but I press forward. And let me, because no, for real, because I was like, I'm gonna show up on his doorstep. I was like, and I'm gonna cuss out. If it get to fisticuffs, I was like, but I'm like, that ain't it. So I was like, I'm going to just write a letter. And I'm like, I'm going to demand that this man does 10 years. Because I Googled, I'm like, what's the maximum you can do for stealing someone's car? Grand theft larceny. And someone was like, 10 years. I was like, give him 10. 10. Throw him in the belly of the prison. Like, just underneath.
I remember you saying that. I was like, whew.
Because I was
like, whoa now.
Because it was just rage. It was rage. It was anger. Because, like, I'm a public servant, bro. And, like, and where I live, I'm like, the rich people live on the other side. All you had to do was literally turn the corner. That's it. It's a cul-de-sac, bro. Kind of like on the other side.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you chose me, a public servant out here advocate. Literally, my job is to advocate for equity and justice and to help domestic and sexual violence survivors. But the bulk of my work is advocating for equity and justice. And here I am talking about your communities and how it is, again, underfunded, undervalued, underserved. And you want to be a vagabond. And now I have to choose to continue to do this work and really advocate for people like you. And I was like, just call me a Republican. I was just like, listen. Lock everybody up. Lock the whole block up. And it's like, and I could hear how absurd I sound.
Yeah.
But I could also hear how hurt I was and how mad I was, how angry I was. And so like I talked to you. You sent me that really good article.
Yes.
It was like a short story. What was that called?
It was, the piece by Miriam Kaba is called Justice. It was published as part of the Feminist Utopia Project back in 2017. And it was also included in her book, We Do This Till We Free Us.
So I remember you sending that to me, and I was like, damn it, Kyle. Because I was just like, again, this is why it's important to have friends that will speak truth to you and not what you want to hear. Because I wanted someone to be like, hey, send him to jail. But all my friends were like, let's evaluate that. But I remember reading it, and I think there was a line, and it said, vengeance is not justice. Mm. And because again, like you're in the fields, and it's like I think the thing with vengeance is people be like, oh, like I want you to feel what I feel, right? And it's like I'm going to enact the same pain for you to feel what I feel, but you don't feel better, right? Like you still feel what you feel,
right?
So like I was really like sitting with that. And I'm like, okay, like I won't write this scathing, you know. And it took me a long time to be like, okay, like I'm just gonna write, you know, just this nice little letter. Not a nice little letter, but I was like, you know, I'm upset. I'm deeply offended. You know, this has inconvenienced me. I really hope this young man gets the help that he gets. So I had a court date this past Wednesday where I was supposed to. Mm-hmm. I did not get my car back until Monday, right? And in my mind, I'm just like, I'm going to get my car back. I go into the place to get my car back, and like they hand over the keys, and the lady's like, yeah, and if you go to Hyundai, they'll, you know, whoop-de-whoop-de-whoop. And I just started crying. And it was like tears that I did not expect to cry. I'm thinking I'm going to get my car, I'm going to go to Wawa, I'm going to go home. I get I'm in there and I cry. And she's just like, please don't cry. And I'm like, I did not plan this, lady.
I'm not trying to want to cry.
And she's like, is it because like, you know, this whole hassle? I'm like, not even just the hassle, but it's like the safety, how I don't feel safe. I feel violated. I feel just like violated in the most, like, I don't say in the most, because I know like there are other types of violations, but it's like you violated this space that is my own.
Yeah. Right.
Where it's like, I take drives on this car, and in this car, I pray in this car. Like I think out loud in this car. And so it's like, you stole this from me. You stole a sense of peace of mind. Right. So I get the car, I'm driving home and I'm crying, which is dangerous. But I'm like crying because it's like and like when I see my car, like they fix it up, it looks new. It looks like outside, it looks brand spanking new. Like they done waxed and it's shining in the sun, glistening. And I look at it and it's like my heart is just sunken. And I know it's a thing. I know, like, again, I have my life and that's the most important thing. And now I have like freedom and access to get to where I need to go, because Hampton Roads, the 757, is not a city that, it's not like New York City where you don't need a car, right? It's not like DC where you can kind of get around through the metro and all the things. And so I'm just like crying on this 20-minute drive home. And I'm just angry, like just so angry. And I'm looking around, surveying the damages. I see the burn holes in the back seat, see my mirror is like smudged. And then I'm like, all right. And the thing is, like, none of my stuff is in this car, right? I look at the trunk and it's like, I had like clothes that I was going to drop off to like Goodwill. That's still in the trunk. And when I check the trunk, I see this nigga's cologne. And then I'm incensed all over again. And I'm like, I wanted to pull up to the jail and just like throw it at his face. And then just go all Apollo Creed.
She's taking swings of the air.
Yes.
She's preparing to box. You can't see this in the audio, but the fists are up.
No, for real. Like, I was just like, I felt rage. I felt like I could have been violent. I wanted to be violent. Yeah. And that's not me. And so I'm angry and I'm like, oh, I'm ready for this court date, mother sucker. I was like, I am going to.
Because that was Monday, right? And then the court date was
Wednesday.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm ready. And the thing is, so everyone's calling me, you got your car. How do you feel? Right. And like I told my best friend, I'm like, imagine you're about to wash clothes and you're down to like your last fresh pair of undies. Someone steals your undies, runs a whole marathon in them, and then gives them back to you with the expectation for you to wear them. I'm like, here you go. Like, what?
Yeah.
And it's like, everyone's like, you got your underwear back? I'm like, after this person done sweated in them? Like, no, I don't want it. And it's like, and again, like if I was like Oprah, had Oprah money, I would be like, listen, total that car out, I'll get a new one.
Right.
I'm like, you can keep it, bruh. Keep it. Yeah. You might need it for work. Keep it. But I need it for work.
Right.
Like, I need it because with my job, I am on call. I actually have to drive to and from places and help people who are actually experiencing crisis.
Yeah.
And it's like, damn. And so, like, everyone's like, you got your car. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm still processing that. So I'm thinking, I am excited for this court date. Because I'm like, mother sucker, I wrote a letter. And I was like, I was prepared to ask for leniency. And the side note, when I talked to the prosecutor about a week or two before, they pulled up the case in the file, and he's like, "Oh, this young man has done this 5 times before."
That's right. You mentioned that.
And like last year, he did like a 9-month stint, and then he got out. And I'm like, "So y'all let this bastard on the street again?" And I remember calling you. I remember us talking, and I was just like, "This nigga needs to get 10 years." And you were just like very practical and logical.
Well, my question was, so 10 years, and again, I mean, we done read the 1619 Project.
We did.
We know the history of our people. We know what the criminal legal system does to us as a people. And it sucks because, as James Baldwin said, to be a black person, an aware black person is to live in a constant state of rage. That is evidenced when your car is stolen. Who should you feel comfortable calling? The police. But as a black person, it's just like, well, shit. You know what I mean? Because there's all the extra baggage around police and what we already know. But at the end of the day, like, okay, something of mine was stolen, and I do need it to get rectified. So, and in this case, they did a good job. They found it. Whatever. That's cool. Yeah. But then cutting back to the time, it's like, okay. And I remember asking you, I was like, so how long were you without a car for?
3 weeks. Technically, 3 weeks.
So you want this young man who's, 20 to get...
He was 20, yep.
10 years. So he'll be 30 when he gets out for 3 weeks of you not having a car.
Yeah, and I was like, damn it, Kyle. I was like, when you say it like that, and again, and I get it. And I think, again, this is why you need friends that actually challenge you and don't co-sign you. I get it. Like, and I feel that, but I think there is a part of me that I hate this for us as black folks, because it's like, white people call the cops all the time, and they don't give a damn if you white, black. I mean, especially if you black, they don't call. But if you're white, they're like, they gonna call. Yeah. And it's like, that's not my problem. But it's like, now it's like there is this onus on me that I am someone who has had harm committed against me, and now I have to factor in the well-being of my perpetrator because he is a black man and how this system treats black men.
Yeah, and you know the community he's from.
Yes. And I say this, pardon my French, but there's a big part of me that wants to be like, fuck you to this young man. Yeah. Like, I don't give it.
Sometimes that's a habit.
And that's my point. And I remember texting you, I was like, question of the day.
Right.
What did I say? I was like, is justice, what did I say?
Consequences versus justice.
Yes. Are consequences and justice the same thing?
Yeah. And I was like, I don't know. And I feel, my answer, I think, now that I think we talked about it later, like, I think consequences are the result of actions that are more or less, I don't want to say natural, but they're just like, it's just the causality. Whereas justice has the opportunity to be an aware, intentional balancing act to something that was done. Yeah. Right. And so whereas consequence could just like, because you could it could be the whole butterfly effect. Like, a consequence could be huge compared to what seems to be a small action. Right. And that could be unintended. That could be, I mean, obviously there's a whole lot of difference, a whole lot that goes into the true consequences of a potentially small action. So that's kind of where I landed on that. But it was a really great question, and I hadn't thought about it, until you asked.
Because I was just like, oh, okay. Because and we talk about, even in the faith, right? We all make mistakes. We all fall short in extending grace. But we even in the Bible talks about not abusing grace.
True.
And I'm like, you've done this 5 times, and you are still outside walking around and popping cars. I was just like, oh, this isn't a mistake. This is a choice.
So what? I remember you saying it. So why do you think? Why did you want him to go to jail for 10 years? Or why did that feeling like pop up? Or
Because okay. So I remember talking to you, and at the time my logic was like, this vagabond is out here stealing cars with other little hoodlums, and I was like, if they lock his ass up for years and years to come, He will be alone, and he will, or maybe not alone, but he will be alienated from these little hood boogers that he's with, and he will think about the consequences of his actions. And maybe, just maybe, he will serve as a cautionary tale to said hood boogers, and they will become productive members of society, and he will be pining from the prison cell looking like damn. And they're going to be out there all married and happy and living life. Like, I used to do fuck shit. Now look at me. I'm a reformed citizen. And then...
And I was like, okay, so you're going to take him from a community that obviously has its challenges. Mm-hmm. It obviously doesn't have all of the right influences or all the right conditions to make good choices, right?
Right.
So you're going to bring him to prison where there are people who have all been convicted or pled guilty. And sadly, most of them pled guilty.
Yeah.
Maybe they didn't even do it. But... people who have been in similar circumstances. So you're gonna send him to there to be in a community of convicted folks.
Yeah.
To be fixed.
Yeah. And again, at the time, I was in a state of rage. And again, this was just this week. Well, this conversation was last week.
Yeah, last week.
And so I think again, so a lot of that was coming from a place of hurt. And I'm still kind of hurt. And it's like, again, that whole thing of vengeance is not justice. Because I was like, oh no, mother sucker, you're going to feel what I feel. You are going to experience the depths of human depravity. And
I remember you saying you wanted him to feel like, because you wanted him to not have freedom. Which
yes.
Prison is a form of that, right?
Yeah.
Now, my idea was, and again, I'm not a restorative justice expert. I've never been trained in circle keeping or anything like that. But when I think of that lack of freedom, which is real, like he literally did steal your ability to move, right? Which is true. So would a restorative justice, would a restorative act be for him to be your personal Uber driver for a month or whatever? So
right.
his life is infringed upon in the sense that he can't do what he wants to do because he needs to be around to drive you where you need to be every day for a month or whatever period of time. Right? That way his freedom is impinged, which is what you wanted because yours was. And you still get to go where you need to go. Right? He's your personal Uber driver. How about that?
But the thing is, you're speaking as if we're in this perfect world because and I get what you're saying, right? Because I'm like, sir, this man is poor. That's why he stole my car.
Right? No. Yeah.
Right? And I get where you're coming from, right? Because you're saying like in a perfect world.
What if the justice system? What if the court systems paid for like whatever rental car situation you had?
But I like to drive myself. I'm not a driving Miss Daisy type.
Yeah, but what if that was the privilege you had? To not have to drive anywhere. You could be on the phone, you could do some work, you know what I'm saying? You could kind of just chill and kick it while this gentleman drove you from place to place because he inconvenienced you. That does two things. One, it doesn't limit your freedom and it actually alleviates the burden of driving. You like driving, but you know, if you don't I mean, you can do more when you don't have to drive, right?
Yeah.
It also shows him how much harm was caused because he sees how much you move, how much you need that vehicle, how much that vehicle is a necessary aspect to your life. And I feel like it's often for people to never speak to their Uber driver, right? But how often do you talk to your Uber driver?
I talk to my Uber drivers. I did, right. But I'm careless, so I talk to people.
Right. So I feel like, and this is kind of taking a strand from the Miriam Kaba story. Part of the restorative justice piece was having the person who caused the harm be in the family of the harm that was caused, because that proximity helps there be a mutual understanding. And you being the chatty person that you are, at some point you will probably talk to this dude potentially, and you might cuss his ass out.
It would, and then
whatever. But my point is, after a month of him driving Miss Daisy around, you know what awareness would he have of you, and what awareness would you have of him after that experience? And could that be a healing, refilling experience? Could it be? I don't know.
Damn it, Kyle. I think when you were talking, the first thing I was like, if that was the case, I would have him drive all the way up to New Jersey. And I was like, and I'm like, listen, my uncles were in the military. They would probably fight him all together. And then I'm like, then we can discuss it. Like, now that you've got your ass collectively beaten, let's talk about this so we can really move on, right? Like,
I don't think that would be.
I know
in accordance with the Restorative.
I know.
There'd probably have to be some safety considerations.
Yeah,
we're making up this policy as we go. So,
right.
We need to make sure this brother's safe.
He didn't make sure I was safe.
Fair.
But again, 2 wrongs don't make it right? And again, eye for eye leaves the whole world blind. But I think for me, the one thing that honestly that really that's kind of being impressed on my heart is the fact that I, at my organization where it's like, yo, like I am on the on-call team. And so that means if there is a call in the middle of the night for someone who is experiencing DV or SV, I have to be there. And so it's like, I'm like, sir, you going to 3 o'clock in the morning, get up.
Yeah.
We out.
And I think that would be, like, he picked the wrong one. Because you are literally a public servant, right? So for him to experience what you experience in your work, and then that also puts him in proximity of the women and the folks that you support in your work. Mm-hmm. I don't know how close he would. I don't know what kind of proximity he would have. There might be rules around what people that aren't trained in what you do can see. But
I'm like, he gonna be trained today. That volunteer. And
think about that, because I mean, him, maybe somebody in his crew, whatever. Maybe they're on the other side of something that you're responding to.
That is true.
There's I mean, and not to put that on him and his community.
Right, I get you.
But it does, chances are there, right?
And we can even talk about, again, like the numbers are there where it's like 1 in 4 women, right? So that's
how many men are doing this? Is it right?
Right,
exactly.
And so yeah. So in terms of restorative justice, I think again for me, the ultimate restorative justice would be this man would have to pay not just restitution, but he'd buy me a new car. It would be on his dime.
But for a man who doesn't have means from a community like he's from, is that a reasonable expectation?
No, it's not. I feel like I'm mad as hell, but
as you should be. I mean, nobody said you should be mad. That's
but I think
reasonable.
I would feel if it's like, okay, you've done this 5 times. This is the final straw. And it's like, we are either going to lock you in a maximum security prison, or we put you in some sort of vocational training, educational training, where I am forcing you to basically get your shit together.
And that's okay.
And that for me, I'm like, you made a mistake, but you are working towards something. You don't have time on your hands to be out here casing joints, and because you're in school, you're learning something, you're learning how to fix an AC or plumbing or something.
Right.
Doing something.
Or fixing security on cars.
Yes. Because I was like, sir, and I think that's the funny thing about court being canceled. Because again, the court date was Wednesday, got postponed. Because I was ready that Wednesday morning. I was up. Would
not have been his best Wednesday.
And I'm telling you, the Lord was waiting in your favor, buddy. Because I promise you, had I rolled up to that courtroom, what I had to say would have not have been nice or pretty.
Yeah.
And I was like, Your Honor, send this man to jail.
So thinking back on that, he already did 9 months. Did that work?
Hell no.
And 10 years would?
Maybe. I was like,
really?
He would have been off the street.
Yeah,
I would have been like,
he would have been off the street, but and maybe 10 years would work with 9 months. I don't know. I feel like we both know, like, academically, the prison system.
It's a sham.
It's punitive, like, by nature. And one of the principles of restorative justice is that justice should heal, not punish.
Yeah.
And so when we think about healing, we need to heal you because you were harmed, you were hurt. He needs to be healed too.
That is true. And that's the thing, like, I can sense that and I know that. And that's the thing, like, everything you're saying is right? But again, this is a journey where it's like, it is really like putting my integrity to the test. Whereas like, I know these things and I do, and like seeing it, it's like, yes. Like when I see it, I'm like, he does need healing. He does need to we need to figure out and address what is like the harm, because there has been harm committed, which is why he's committing harm. Right. And society needs to play a part in that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and again, it's one thing to know it. The test is walking it out when it happens to you. Because I used to I used to tell people that I'm like, yes, like, you know, we need restorative justice. We need to do all these things, but when it's you, like, that's like the real. And I'm saying that not to like invalidate what you're saying, but like to let people know where it's like we out here and we talk in social justice and we talk about reform and we talk these things, but like from a distance, like where we are removed from some of these things.
I'm guilty of that 100%.
And that's okay, right? Because but again, there might be a time, and I really hope that, and I don't wish this on anybody. I don't wish harm or violence on anybody, but like, it's kind of like when you go to college and people have like their belief systems and things challenged, and it's like either you gonna, I don't want to say fold, but either you're gonna come out with something new and a new perspective, or you're gonna be able to like stay like stick to your guns. Yeah. And so this has really been a trying time for me, like faith wise, for me. In the work that I do. Because again, there was a part of me, I was like, oh nah, I'm a Republican now. F you Negroes. I was like, I'm done. I know I was just coming from a place of hurt. And I know, like, again, I'm having this conversation and I mean what I say. Yeah. And like, and again, and I think I was talking to you before the podcast where it's like in the training that we do, we talk about like the 3 stages, right, that survivors of DV or SV experience, right? So like you have like the first phase, which is like, it's called acute. So it's like you have all like the symptoms after it just happened that displays after the first couple days, where it's like you're angry, you're sad, you're crying, you're all the things. Then you have like as life kind of, or as like the weeks and months transition, you might feel another set of symptoms where it's like you're more withdrawn, you might have insomnia, you might, you know, have other symptoms where it's like it's adversely affecting you. And so then in the third stage where it's like, okay, you're coming to a resolution, that might be the court date. And we always advocate that the court is never like the end all be all, because courts and verdicts can go kind of one way. But it's like you're going to therapy, you're healing, you're doing the work. So you go through this little like chart, right? But the thing to note is, even if you think you're healed one day, something can trigger you and send you back to one. Yep. And that's kind of, and I'm not saying this to compare trauma responses. I'm saying this where it's like, today, I feel like, okay, I'm working through it and I'm at a 3. Now, if I see that man in court, I can't promise I won't go back to 1. Yeah. I can only try to work my way back to 3. Yeah.
It's a constant effort to try to stay there.
Yes, and to forgive him. Again, 70 times 7. So it's like, still, like, when I think about it, it's like, okay, like, I have to forgive him and, like, all of his circumstances, all the things. And extending that grace. And so... Yeah.
And I think that's admirable, and I really do think it's beautiful how your faith is centering you and grounding you in this experience, and how you're looking at the positives in terms of like the outcomes for you personally, and your own devocation and your own like all of that. I think we also can't lose sight of the fact that like he needs work too. Yeah. You know what I mean? We you know, and I feel like, because you're right. I mean, part of the reason you wanted him away for 10 years is so he couldn't do it again. Clearly, he's done it 5 times. The 9 months didn't do much. So you know, in terms of like justice, healing, not punishing, like what would heal him?
I don't know, and I think the thing that comes to my mind is, what's his neighborhood looking like? Right. Like, do you have trees? Right, because again, like that's a thing, right? Social determinants.
Like he didn't drive by the street.
I didn't. I thought about it.
No.
I was like, I got in the car. Holy Spirit was like, nah, walking back in them steps. Go back in the house. Don't be outside.
Yeah, but you were asking like, what does the neighborhood look like?
Right, because again, like, do you have adequate, like, just a treescape, right?
Is there a legit grocery store nearby?
Yes. Like, what did you grow up seeing? Who were you around? Like, why are people doing what they're doing, and what resources do you have? Right. Like, because I'm thinking, you're 20. When I was 20, and it's just me, I'm like, I was in school, I was working, I had things to do, I had purpose. Yeah. Right? And I'm like, you out here being shiftless. Like, what's going on? Yeah. Where's the disconnect?
Yeah, and I don't think it's necessarily you, the hurt person's responsibility to know where he needs to heal necessarily. I mean, you as the victim, I feel like you and the society should focus on healing you. Yeah. Right, as the victim. But I think there should be another segment of society who has the capacity and responsibility with healing him. Yeah. And focusing on that. So like when he was sentenced to 9 months, we already know being there for 9 months is not healing. Nobody's asking him what's wrong, what happened, blah blah blah, where, you know, whatever. And I think part of that, the restorative justice circle is supposed to have that communication, because one of the key tenets of restorative justice is focusing on relationships, not laws and rules, and trying to keep the relationship, mending the relationship, both with the individuals immediately involved with the situation, but also the external factors of like the community. So like your neighbors who might know your car got stolen, they might be feeling violated at a secondary level in the sense that it happened to their neighbor.
Yeah.
And so sending him away for that long, like it prevents him from doing it again, but it doesn't prevent the circumstances from arising again. And I think, you know, it's a spiritual, I think, I'm not sure if this is biblical directly or not, but I know, you know, the idea of like how we treat the least of ourselves tells us about ourselves.
Yeah.
And it also tells both the fact that they're in the position they're in tells us about themselves, and then how we treat them when they're acting on it. Like that also tells us about ourselves. So the fact that he's in a community that looks like it does is reflective of us as a global society. You know what I'm saying? And then how we treat him once he does something wrong, like are we just gonna double down and be like, sorry Oscar, stay being a grouch, stay back, you know what I'm saying? Or are we gonna actually like, oh shit, you really are in the situation, like what are we gonna do to prevent folks like you from thinking that this is the funnest and most best thing you could do with your time? And I don't know what the answers are, but prison ain't it. I'm gonna stand on that.
Okay.
And I remember
I'll say American prisons.
Very. That's a great point. I know we were talking about some.
Is it Switzerland,
Brazil, Israel. There's other countries that have vastly different approaches to prison, which are more healing, more focused on that. And it's so wild to me that we call ourselves a Christian nation, but we have this punitive system, which is not, and I don't feel like it's inherently Christian.
Are we a Christian nation? Because I was like, because they took scriptures to manipulate it, like so I'm like, it's not real.
That's fair.
It's like, you know, it's just like they found something to like, this will uphold and kind of support my supremacy, my violence.
True.
You know,
I mean, officially, the nation obviously doesn't have a religion, but
right?
I think most would.
They be trying to fake it.
We can see that it defaults to Judeo-Christian norms and whatever, but yeah. So how do you feel now? What, like, do you feel any better just having your car back for a few more days now? Like it hasn't been a week yet, but
yeah,
do you feel better a little bit, or is it still like a recurring work to like? It's
still a recurring work, and I mean, and I think I have to actually take it back because it's like there's still a few like little hiccups.
Yeah,
and the lady was like, call us if there's anything, so I still have to take it back again. But it is a reoccurring thing of like having to like train my mind to be like, you're semi-safe, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I am glad to like be able to get on the road and not think about like, okay, like this time, like from this time Lyft is going to be at its highest. So I got like, you know, like doing all the
logistics.
Where it's like I can just hop in the car and go. Yeah. Like I went to Bible study last night for the first time in like months. Yeah. And I'm one of those people. I mean, they have it virtual, which I would watch, but it's not the same. No. And again, I don't really like asking people for help, so I'm like, I'm gonna just go. Like because I know my friend, like, I would have taken you. I'm like, girl, you live like way on the other side of the 757. I'm not gonna do that. I was like, I'm gonna just watch it online until I can get my car. And so when I went last night, I was like, oh, like it felt good to be back, you know?
Yeah.
So it's a process.
Yeah, no, that's real. I feel that. Is there anything that you think you need to heal and to feel restored?
That's funny you asked that question. Because for the longest time, I've been thinking about like, yo, should I just carry a firearm? Should I get me a gun?
But that's preventative, though, to prevent something else from happening. What about in this
phase?
In this case, what would help you, like, seek closure, peace? What would help you get to that point with this particular scenario? And you may not know yet. It may take more time to know what that might look like. But I'm just curious if you have any insight now.
I don't know. I mean, if you want to, like, if we're talking like like, I don't say short term, but like
Yeah.
basic short term thing. I got the little, like the bar.
Cloud.
Yeah, it feels so ghetto to have that thing. It's just like,
Yeah.
and it's so inconvenient. But again, I hope it protects me. Closure. I just want to be done with it. Like I want, and I think ultimately, once I get a new, and I'm grateful for the car that I have. But again, the goal for me is to get a new car as soon as possible, and that might take another year or two, and that's fine. But I was like, I don't want to go through this again. And the fact that this was like, the first time it was an attempt, second time it was like completed theft. So I was just like, I don't want to go through this again. I don't want to do this no more.
Yeah.
And so, but I think I'm in a better space and place. And again, it is definitely one of those things where it's like day by day. And I know some people are like, girl, it's just a car. It's not that deep. And like, again, it's a car. It's not that deep. And it's not even it's the peace of mind of it.
Yeah,
that's
and the safety, the security piece. That's like a core on the I would say around the hierarchy.
The Maslow's,
yeah.
And like,
that's critical. That's very foundational. So that's important.
Yes, and I also want to mention like, I'm a woman.
Yep.
Like, and I say that not to be like, not to reinforce antediluvian gender roles, but as a woman, like safety is a thing. Safety is even a love language for me. Because again, it's like you want to feel safe, especially like when wherever you go. And so it's like, and there's always these things where like, we always tell women, be on the lookout, carry mace, be aware of your surroundings. But it's like, y'all never tell men, or not just men, because things happen to men too, but y'all, like, it's always do these things. And rather like, don't be a rapist. Don't be a theft.
It's about how to protect yourself from the acceptance that this could happen to you, rather than stopping and reculturing men to in a way that makes that unacceptable.
Yes.
So I really appreciate you sharing this story with us. I feel the feels. I hope folks feel what you went through, and it was actually, it's really interesting. I was listening back to the episode of Randell Strickland, and he mentioned a car being stolen as an example in the show, and he said he had been through that and that it was tough. And so to hear your story like in real time, more or less this summer, has just been eye-opening for me. And I'm proud of you for managing it as well as you have.
Thank you.
It's a struggle, and it is a violation. I mean, as you were talking about the things you do in your car, I mean, it reminded me of the shower. Like, you might sing to yourself in the shower. You might have your deepest thoughts. You know what I'm saying? Like, because it's just a space of just solitude and just you really, like, in the shower you got water, but in the car you have motion. You might have to roll the windows down, air is hitting you. Like, there's a very, I don't know, spiritual, I don't know, there's a very powerful aspect of just having a vehicle and being able to move on your own, the independence and the security of that movement. That's a real thing, and it's a privilege, obviously. It's a privilege that we have in this country, but for you to have been without that and feel that was threatened, and to see how bad it impacted you. I mean, that's it's really tough, and so I'm sorry you had to go through that.
Yeah, thank you.
But I'm proud of you. I'm glad you got it back.
Thank you.
And what did you do with the cologne thing?
Huh?
What did you do with the cologne?
It's still in there. I
really?
It is.
I'm surprised you didn't chuck that into some fireplace and let that shit blow up.
I was just so I was so mad. I just slammed the trunk, and I was like, I was already like you ever just like reach your threshold?
Yeah.
And it was just like I couldn't. Like I was just like, because this it was day one, so it was like things that again I had like an obituary in there from like a recent funeral.
Yeah.
And that was gone. Like I had just stuff. It was like my stuff.
Yeah,
And it was gone. Like I had cute little sticky notes. It was my stuff, and it's like all my stuff is gone, and all that's left is this bastard's cologne.
Yeah, and the donation stuff.
Yes, and the donation stuff.
Yeah.
And it was just funny where it's like the things that I didn't even want to keep is what remains.
It's what's left. That's yeah.
Yeah.
Damn. Well, yeah, I appreciate you sharing the story.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll tap in, see if there's any updates going forward. Maybe update it for the folks. But yeah, I'm proud of you. Happy for you to be working through it.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll close with what song are you rocking to right now? What song is carrying you through this time?
Okay, so Madison Ryann Ward, she dropped this album, and I just like rediscovered it. Or no, I just discovered it, to be honest. And so she has this track. It's called Wanda. And like she's like, it's a vibe, and like, you know, like one of the lyrics is like, I've been sad for a little too long, and it's like she's like, it's like a song just where it's like, there's sunshine, there's hope, like I have faith, I'm good, and so, you know, I put my good jeans on, like I'm coming out and I'm okay, and that's just been like, I was like bumping it on the way here, and I was just like, you know, again, like it's a fine girl fall, and I feel like it was just like soundtrack to like fine girl fall.
Okay.
And so I was just like, Madison Ryann Ward. The album is called A New Thing, and the song is called Wanda. So what about you? What are you jamming to?
Audiobooks. You got me on All About Love, Bell Hooks.
Okay.
I've been listening to that. I've also been listening to The Psychology of Money, which my therapist recommended. It's kind of strange. But music wise, so actually I was in Philly last week. I saw my buddy who was on the show, episode 3. And he reminded me, we both love Oddisee, who's based in DC, and I was listening to his stuff today at work, today and yesterday while I was working. So yeah, I'll say Oddisee. He's like, his instrumentals are dope. I can't think of one in particular, but yeah, I'll say Oddisee for now.
I love it. Okay, gang. So you're lit.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, all right. Well, that concludes the episode. Cierra, again, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
As always, you can get at me on Instagram at RealDadult. That's RealDadult.
You can find me at Cierra Charisma, which is CIERRACARISMA.
All right. So on Instagram, you can let us know what you thought about this episode or any prior episodes. Also, you can drop a note if you have an idea for a future episode. We hope to catch you here next time. Until then, be safe, be well. Peace.
Bye.
It's Just Life podcast is recorded, produced, and edited by me. All thoughts and views expressed on the show represent that moment in time. Participants have the right to be wrong, learn, and reshape their ideas as the journey through life continues. Please remember to like this episode. If you haven't already, subscribe to the show on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And as always, thank you for listening.
Waving like they can actually see me. Like, hey people.
Yo.
Cracking up.